know, even though you may be dressed really warm, there's always those times where you're going to want to take your hands out of your gloves for finer movement and maybe to uh, pick up something that's really small or just, 101 different things. And when that happens out in the winter, your hands, especially in really frigid temperatures, and you're talking teens and when the wind's blowing, it doesn't take much for your hands to get really cold. And if you're touching cold metal, like on a gun, or maybe, I don't know, you're messing around with the snow, brushing it off of something, your hands, when they're cold, it's almost like your feet getting cold when you're sleeping in a sleeping bag. And it can take a while. It can be kind of difficult, especially if you have circulation issues, to get your hands warm. So today's video is all going to be about keeping your hands warm. Stay with me. Thank you for joining me today on my channel as we take a look at a little invention that certainly your grandfathers and great-grandfathers would have been familiar with. Maybe not in this exact form, but even today, having hand warmers when you're out in the blind or maybe chopping wood or going on a hike, whatever, having those disposable hand warmers that, once you break open the package, the oxygen activates it and you get that heat in about 15 minutes. It may seem kind of small, but it could possibly save your life. So having a hand warmer, even just for emergency situations, maybe you're not going to use it for your active part of the day, especially when you're moving around and you got your gloves on and everything, then that makes sense, because you're already outfitted. There's no point in having it. But if you're sitting down in a spot, or maybe like the example I gave at the beginning of the video where you're taking off your gloves, or if you do have poor circulation and maybe you're getting ready to go to bed, having some hand warmers, putting them in the bottom of your sleeping bag or in your socks, maybe right around you, just to help you get that edge off and get to sleep, it can be pretty useful and can really help make your experience more comfortable. Now, before we get too far into this, I want to give a shout out to my patrons on Patreon. If that's something you're interested in supporting this channel financially, I sincerely appreciate it. Check it out on Patreon. It's Mr. Dyer's Musings. All right, so this style of hand warmer, I could not find a patent date for it, but I found something that's very similar to it. And if you like the details, if you want to dive down into the history and you want to see primary sources of what I have from my experience of trying to dig into it, check out honorableoutfitters.com. Again, that's www.honorableoutfitters.com. I have a ton of articles on there, and the article goes into depth, even gives the patent, so you can look at it yourself, and some various sources I was able to find about historically the use of hand warmers. They go back centuries. Like I could not find where the first charcoal hand warmer was used, what society or whatever. But across the world, societies have used charcoal in some type of vessel to stay warm during the winter months. So it's not a new idea for humanity to use charcoal. But this little pocket warmer, this style, the shape, the size and everything, that's about just larger than your palm for your pocket. That invention was invented in 1887 by someone in Japan named Henry E. Amore. Henry E. Amore. And it's different than this, but the concept really is the same. His invention had a tin case, and it was perforated. It had a bunch of little holes in it to allow the circulation, and it was covered with a cloth. And I believe in the patent it suggested muslin or some type of cotton cloth. And that really was just to help prevent ashes from falling out and getting in your pocket. And I had a little slide tab that you would open it up and you would drop a charcoal, what he called cartridge. So it was actually covered in paper, into the case, and since it would slowly burn, it would keep you warm for hours at a time. These type of hand warmers, they use charcoal, but not covered in a paper cartridge. Instead, it's just a charcoal stick. Now, I remember in my youth seeing one of these, and I believe it was my grandfather's. So he had one that was a long time ago. I can't find what happened to that one. And what got me onto this is I was reading a book. I was doing some reading, research and stuff, and I just stumbled upon this idea of a charcoal hand warmer, and it got my mind spinning. Well, how long ago was this, and how common was it, especially for sportsmen out in the outdoors? And I could not find my original source. But on that website again, honorableoutfitters.com, I found a bunch of other sources that really leads me to believe that this would have been a very acceptable, fairly common thing for outdoor sportsmen to use. So I leave it up to you, but check that out and dig down into yourself. But it's a neat little device. This particular one, it's covered in like a red felt, and it has a fire retardant material on the inside to make sure not only the stick doesn't rattle around, but it also helps dispense the heat slowly. It still has the perforated metal casing, just like the original by Henry E. Moore. And instead of opening with a tab, it opens up just like a little flip case. And it has a little button, so it snaps, and you can't open it unless you press that button. Now, a lot of these that you buy today will still come in a little case, so if it does open up, then it's still safe. All right. But 1887 is when this basic design was around, and I couldn't find Horace Kephart or Nesmith or Seton or Cave, all the authors that I tend to go to who were well known for woodscraft and campcraft and bushcraft, and I couldn't find anything from them about having a hand warmer. But in the catalogs and other sources, especially with motor camping that became really popular in the early 1900s, I did find a couple of advertisements. So that leads me to believe that if you're a sportsman and you're sitting out in the blind, or you're out in the tree stand for a long time, having that hand warmer goes a long way. And it does put off a little bit of a smell, but it's not a very strong smell. Back in the 1940s, 1950s, I think even in the late 1930s, to be honest, the type of hand warmers that would use like Zippo fuel became pretty popular. And there was also catalytic hand warmers that were available in that time. But those tend to put off a little bit more of a pungent smell than the charcoal stick. So I'm going to move the camera, and I'm going to show you how to light it, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience using this. Before I do, though, if this information has been valuable to you so far, if it's been useful and you found it interesting, please do me a favor and click the like button. That way others find this video, and they can experience some of the same things, and they can participate in our community. I really appreciate it. So go ahead and click the like button if it was any useful to you. Thank you very much. All right, move the camera, and we'll take a look. Okay, so I have my marbles match case, which I already did a video on earlier last summer. You should check out that video if you're interested in this little handy dandy piece of equipment. We're going to open it up. Take out my matches. I don't have a Strike Anywhere match, so I guess I need to order them. They're kind of expensive in comparison to regular matches. All right, so I have my couple matches, I have my strike paper, and I have my charcoal. Okay, you can light both ends, and that's just going to allow more heat at a faster pace. But when I use this, I lit one, and it provided more than enough heat for me and my comfort. So that's what I'm going to show you. And you can also break these up into smaller pieces and you can light the ends. Again, it's going to not last as long, but it's going to put off more heat for your comfort. So if you're in an emergency situation like that, then that might be something you want to do to get a faster reaction and get more intense heat. But for my comfort, my use, again, I don't have poor circulation. Just lighting one was good enough for me for the entire day. In fact, when I lit it, it lasted over 10 hours. Okay, so you're going to light your match. Maybe you have a lighter. Let it burn. I'm going to light just one end. You can kind of see the changing of the color there, where it's actually looking a little bit blacker. Okay, so there's smoke coming. You can see kind of an ember if you blow on it. There. Now, the instructions say you want to get it to burn down about 1/2 inch before you put it in the case and you close it. There you go. It's about 1/2 inch right there. So then you stick it in there, and we're going to go ahead and close it. Then I'll tell you about my personal experience. So you can shake this. As you can hear, there's no rattling. It's very, very quiet. It has like a little vent here and here that lets out a little bit of smell. Same thing through the portholes, but most of the smell actually comes from the two ends here. But it's not a very strong or pungent smell. Okay, I want to change the camera and talk to you a little bit about my experience while this is warming up and tell you about how long it takes. All right, so this device, well, already I can feel the heat coming from the end where it's lit. When I used it out in the cold, it lasted over 10 hours. And it actually gradually became hotter and hotter and hotter, as warmest at the end of the day. And in the morning, when I no longer needed it, I opened it up and checked it out, and all that was left was very, very fine gray ash. And there was no chunks, anything left over. But the temperature that it got to was probably in maybe the 80s. I don't have a device to really check to see what the temperature was for the hand warmer, but it was good and warm, but not too hot that it was uncomfortable for me to hold on to for long periods of time. And I kept it in my pocket, and as I needed it, I put it in my hands. I also had a glove. I put it in my glove and warmed up the hand that way for a little while. But having something like this, now I would probably suggest having a nice tight case, like a cotton case or something with the drawstring. That way, if you don't accidentally pop it open, or maybe wrap some rubber bands around this to make sure it stays good and closed, and then put it in a sock. But having something like this that you would put in your sleeping bag towards the bottom to keep your feet warm would be pretty nice. We did a video on the wood sleeping bag, which is right behind me here, and I mentioned on there about the feet. Once your feet get cold, then it's pretty difficult to warm them back up. Now you can always warm up water and put that in a bottle, put that in the sock or some other sackcloth or something. Put that in the bottom of your sleeping bag to help you stay warm for long periods of time. But something like this, it's small. Again, I'm taller. There's not a whole lot of space in most sleeping bags for me to feel comfortable with stretching out. Having something small like this that I can either put in my sock with me, and sleep with it actually in my sock and not be afraid of it getting too hot would be nice to have. Or you can just go to your local store and get those hand warmers that are really cheap. But this is renewable, especially if you're trying to think green and going green, things like that. Charcoal sticks. It's a natural material, and you just keep reusing it over and over again. It has that nice aspect to it. So, I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. and what your preferences are. But this little device isn't that expensive. In fact, on my webpage, and in fact in the bottom of the description, I provided you my affiliate link. You can get this exact same thing on Amazon. It's like $13. And I bought this pack of refuelable sticks, Stand Sport. Now these are the only refuelable sticks that I've used. I haven't used any. This is just my personal experience. I'm not really promoting this particular brand, but it did last, like I said, over 10 hours of heat on a really cold day when I was out there. This is Stand Sport wood charcoal solid fuel sticks. You can pretty much use any charcoal stick that I'm aware of that you can buy online to refuel this little case. So throw a couple of these in your backpack, throw this in your pocket, nothing else. I guess you got a fire starter. We keep going on about having things to make fire, to keep you warm, to keep you safe, to cook and eat and everything. So having a couple of these in your backpack wouldn't be bad to have anyways. And they weigh pretty much nothing. But again, nothing else, just having some in an emergency. Maybe throw a couple of these in your car, that way in case you get stuck. There's a couple instances here this year where people were stuck on the highway in the middle of this terrible weather conditions. Having something like that last 10 hours, it's pretty nice. It doesn't put off any toxic fumes or anything. The smell's pretty minimal. You're good to go. Right there, that's where the heat is. You can feel it. It's good and comfortable. So, I hope you liked the video. If you did, please click like, do me a favor. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Give a kiss and hug to your loved ones, and I'll see you guys next Sunday. Take care.